class.
Yeah. So in today's class, what we are going to see is you are going to design a plate girder with a combination of loads. So whatever we have discussed so far, it is all related to plate girder design only. Okay. But what we have specifically seen in the previous two models of problems is the first case is without using intermediate stiffness, that is intermediate transverse stiffness. I'll write it in short form. And in the second model, we have seen using intermediate transverse stiffness. But remember here, without using intermediate transverse stiffness means you're going to use end bearing stiffness. Okay, we have used this one, that is end bearing stiffness. And in the second model, you have used intermediate transverse stiffness. Along with that, you also have used end bearing stiffness. So the both are used in model 1, model 2 problem. And in model 1 problem, we have used only the end bearing stiffness and we haven't used the intermediate transverse stiffness. And one thing which is common in both these problems is the type of load. So in both the models of problems, the type of load is UDL load, that is uniformly distributed load. Some amount of load was there, which is an UDL load, right? Now in today's class, we are going to see the third model problem, which is you have a combination of loads. That means you have a load of UDL and you also have a load of point loads. So this is the combination of loads problem. So the design process of plate girder for model 3 problem goes in a slightly different way than what you have seen in model 1 and model 2. Okay, so the model 1 and model 2 problems are more or less have the same design process. Model 3 will have a slightly different process of solving. However, the steps remain same, but you will get some additional steps, that is load carrying stiffness, design of end load carrying stiffness. All these things will come. We'll see that during the design process. Okay, so I hope you have written the question. You can keep the subheading for this question as plate girder design with UDL and point loads. So this is what we are going to see. So first, let's look at the question, what they have given and what you have to find out ultimately, then we'll solve the problem. So what they have said is you have to design a welded plate girder for a simply supported deck, okay, for a simply supported bridge deck beam with clear span of 24 meters. And here, one thing which you have to focus is with a dead load of 20 kilonewtons per meter, exclusive of self weight, and also live load of 10 kilonewtons per meter. And you also have two concentrated loads. Okay, two concentrated load of 200 kilonewtons at 6 meters from each end. And the beam is laterally restrained and you have to use thick web. Okay, this is what they have mentioned in the question. So before solving this problem, you have to identify whether you have to use both intermediate transverse stiffness and end bearing stiffness, or you can use only one stiffener. So that has to be identified initially. So how to identify that? So as I was telling in the previous model problem, what we have talked is whenever you are using thin web, okay, whenever you are using thin web, you have to use intermediate transverse stiffness and you also have to use end bearing stiffness, right? So in the previous model problem we have seen, I'll show you the question also if you want. So they have clearly mentioned in the question that use thin webs, right? So you can see in the question, use thin webs. So when they are talking about use thin webs, okay, so then at that time what you have to do is you have to ensure, right, you have to ensure that use both intermediate transverse stiffness and also the end bearing stiffness. When you are using thick web, okay, when you are using thick web, you don't need to use intermediate transverse stiffness. What you can use is you can use only the end bearing stiffness. So in thin web, you have to use both intermediate transverse stiffness as well as end bearing stiffness. Whereas in thick web, you have to use only the end bearing stiffness and you should not use intermediate transverse stiffness, right? So this thing, from this thing, you are clearly known that you are going to design only the end bearing stiffness, not the intermediate transverse stiffness. So our problem will be focusing on design of end bearing stiffness. So that's how you have to identify which type of stiffener you're going to use for the problem. Okay, so I hope it is clear. Now, the second thing here is, here you have two types of loads. One is the dead load and the other one is the live load. And along with that, you also have the concentrated loads or point loads on the member. So before solving the problem, let us draw the diagram. Okay, it's a simply supported beam. Okay, they have said it's a simply supported beam. So let me draw the simply supported beam. Okay, so which is having a span of 24 meters. The span of the simply supported beam is 24 meters. On the top of the simply supported beam, you have the dead load and the live load, which is a uniformly distributed load, right? So you have the dead load and live load. So what is this? So this is a combination of dead load plus live load. So which is 20 kilonewtons per meter and 10 kilonewtons per meter. So this is the uniformly distributed load which is acting on the member. So on a whole, you have 30 kilonewtons per meter is the total uniformly distributed load on the member. And along with this, you also have two concentrated loads, which they have mentioned in the question. So you can see the two concentrated loads are 200 kilonewtons, okay, which are placed at a distance of 6 meters from each end. So let us draw the uniform point loads also. Yeah. So from 6 meters of each end, okay, from 6 meters of each end, you have the point loads that are acting on the member. So you can say here. So from each end, you have point loads of 200 kilonewtons of intensity, which are acting at a distance of 6 meters from either ends. So this is the diagram which they have set, right? So in the previous problems, we have only the uniformly distributed load, and hence it has become easy to find out the maximum bending moment and maximum shear forces. Now here you have the combination of loads. So finding out the maximum bending moment and the maximum shear forces goes in a little complex way. However, we can simplify that into a very smallest possible number, and then we are going to design the section. Okay, so I hope it is clear for all of you regarding the loading conditions. Fine. So the first step which you are going to design here is, you can keep the heading as design loads. Design loads. So we need to find out here the factored loads. That is what ultimately the design loads are. So now let's find out what is the total factored load on girder. Total factored load on girder. So that equals to 1.5, which is the partial safety factor, into dead load plus live load. Okay, 1.5 into dead load plus live load into span plus 1.5 times of, which is the partial safety factor, 1.5 times of point loads. 1.5 times of point loads. Okay. Now let's solve the total factored load acting on the girder. So that equals to 1.5 times of, what is the dead load and live load? It is 20 and 10. So the dead load is 20 kilonewtons per meter and the live load is 10 kilonewtons per meter into span, which is 24 meters, plus 1.5 times of point loads. So how many point loads we are having? We are having 2 point loads. So 2 times of, what is the intensity of each point load? It is 200 kilonewtons. So therefore, if you solve, the total factored load on girder will be 1680 kilonewtons. Okay. Now we also have to find out the self weight of girder. Why we need to find out the self weight of girder? If you check down the question, they have very clearly mentioned that exclusive of self weight, right? They had said this point, excluding self weight of the girder. So since they have said excluding self weight of the girder, you have to find out the self weight of the girder also. If they have said inclusive of self weight, then you don't need to calculate this self weight of the girder, right? Now, here you have to remember one point, which is in the first two models of problem, we have taken the self weight of girder as WL by 400. Okay, so the self weight of girder, you have taken it as WL by 400. This is apply, this formula is applied only when you have the UDL load. Now here you have a combination of loads. So when you have a combination of loads, that is UDL and point load or concentrated loads, you can shift this value to W by 200. So usually it is WL by 200. Okay, remember these two formula. When you have uniformly distributed load, you can calculate the self weight of girder as WL by 400. And when you have the combination of load, you can alter this formula to WL by 200. Okay, so this is how you can write down the values. So therefore, self weight of plate girder equals to WL, right? So this WL is the total load or the total factored load, which is 1680. So I'm writing the formula WL by 200. That will be the entire term W into L is 1680 because we have multiplied with the span here. So again, you don't need to multiply 1680 into 24. Don't do that because we have already multiplied with the span. Anyways, so 1680 upon 200, which is the value. So that gives you 8.4 kilonewtons per meter. 8.4 kilonewtons per meter. This is the self weight of girder. So therefore, total uniformly distributed load equals to dead load plus live load plus self weight of girder. Dead load plus live load plus self weight of girder. What is the dead load intensity? It is 20 and live load intensity is 10 and self weight of plate girder is 8.4, which will give you 38.4 kilonewtons per meter. 38.4 kilonewtons per meter. This is the total uniformly distributed load which is acting on the girder. And for this, you have to find out the factored uniformly distributed load. So factored uniformly distributed load will give you 1.5 times of 38.4. So which will be 57.6 kilonewtons per meter. And you can round off this value to 58 kilonewtons per meter. Or you can keep the same value also, that's up to you. So this is the total factored uniformly distributed load acting on the member. Now you also have to find out the factored concentrated load or factored point load. Factored concentrated or point load equals to 1.5 times of what is the load intensity? It is 200. So into 200. I have calculated this value for only one concentrated load. Okay, so which will be 300 kilonewtons. Okay, so the total factored concentrated load for each load intensity is 300 kilonewtons. So this is how the calculation of designed loads gets differed from the previous two models of problems to the present model of problem. So in the previous models of problems, since we didn't have the dead loads and live loads, we haven't solved this entire long process. So whenever you have a combination of loads, this is the must and should process which you have to solve. Okay, now, so in the second step, what we are going to do is we are going to find out the shear forces and bending moments. So you can keep the second heading as shear forces and bending moments, or shear force and bending moment. So what is this and how to solve? So in the first two models of problems, you have the uniformly distributed load where it is acting throughout the span, and then you have found out the maximum bending load or maximum bending moment equals to WL square by 8 and maximum shear force equals to WL by 2. Remember, these formulas are applicable only when you have the uniformly distributed load. But in our case, we have a combination of loads. We have the uniformly distributed load and we also have the point load on the member. So when you have a combination of loads, these formulas, that is WL square by 8 and WL by 2 formulas, are not applicable to find out the maximum bending moments and the maximum shear forces. Now, how to find out this one? Okay, I'll let you know how to find out this one. So before finding out the maximum shear force value, let us calculate the reaction forces at the supports. Okay, you can name these supports as A, support A, and this is support B. So let's find out the reaction forces at both the supports. Okay, so end reaction at each support, end reaction at each support equals to, this can be calculated in the simplest possible way, that is total load upon 2. So you can calculate the end reaction in this way, total load upon 2. So how do you calculate the total load? So the total load can be calculated as 58 is the total factor UDL load, that is this one. Okay, so 58 into span, which is 24 meters. Okay, plus 300 plus 300. What is this 300? It is the intensity of the factored point load. Okay, so 300 kilonewtons is the factored concentrated load. So from this, you can find out the end reaction at each support, which will be 996 kilonewtons. Remember, so this is how you have to calculate the values. So now let's find out the maximum shear force. Okay, so therefore, maximum shear force equals to, so usually when you are solving for shear force and bending moment diagrams, you have to find out the shear force values at each and every point. That is shear force at A, shear force at B, shear force at D, shear force at D. Likewise, you have to find out. So since that becomes the lengthy process, you can cut short that process and you can solve in this way. Okay, so the maximum shear force is taken as the end reaction value which is obtained. So this will be the maximum shear force. Even if you try to solve for shear force at each and every point, ultimately the maximum shear force will be 996 kilonewtons only. So remember, the maximum shear force can be taken as the value which is the end reaction at each support. Okay, you can directly take this value as the maximum shear force. Now let's calculate the maximum bending moment as well. Okay, maximum bending moment. Now the question is, you have different points on the member where exactly the maximum bending moment occurs. So it is always said that maximum bending moment occurs at the center of the span. You know this, the maximum bending moment always occurs at the center of the span. So now let's redraw the diagram and then I'll talk about how to solve. So you have the simply supported beam wherein you have the uniformly distributed load. Okay, and the intensity of uniformly distributed load is 58 kilonewtons per meter. Right, we have solved here 58 kilonewtons per meter, this one, total factored uniformly distributed load. And you also have the factored concentrated loads. So let me draw those values also. So the factored concentrated loads are acting at a distance of 6 meters from each support. And here also you have the factored concentrated load. So what is the intensity of each factored concentrated load? It is 300 kilonewtons. You can see the 300 kilonewtons. Remember to take the factored loads. Don't take the loads which are given in the question. They are not the factored loads. So you have to multiply with 1.5 and then only you have to look for these values. Okay, so this is the modified loading diagram. Now here you have to mention the points in order to find out the maximum bending moment. So I'm mentioning this as support A, and this as support B, and this is support C, and this is support D. As I was telling earlier, the maximum bending moment occurs at the center of the span. So somewhere here you can note the center, which I am denoting with E. Okay, so this is the point where the maximum bending moment occurs. Okay, so let us find out what is the maximum bending moment occurring at point E. Okay, and the total span is 24 meters, which is given in the question. So therefore, maximum bending moment at point E equals to, so please check this condition very carefully. So how to calculate the maximum bending moment? So it can be calculated as the maximum shear force. Okay, it can be calculated as maximum shear force value, that is 996, into total span divided by 2. Okay, maximum shear force into total span divided by 2 minus UDL load, that is factored UDL load, which is 58, and it is acting at a distance of half of the total distance into 12 by 2. I'll talk about this. How does this 12 by 2 has come from? Okay, minus the intensity of the concentrated load, that is 300, into the distance at which it is acting. So this is how you can calculate the maximum bending moment. I'll read rather entire question now. I mean, I'll read out the entire maximum bending moment. So just be careful at what you're seeing so that it will get clear. So this is the point where the maximum bending moment is happening. So this distance is 12 meters. Okay, this distance is 12 meters. So from this, you can draw the diagram. So the total uniformly distributed load is 58. Okay, the total uniformly distributed load is 58. So up to what distance it is acting? It is acting at a distance of 12 meters. So 58 into 12 into half of this distance, which will be 12 by 2. That is what I have written here in this statement. Okay, so the second parameter is clear. And the third parameter is, okay, that is 300 into 6. What is 300? It is the concentrated load which is acting on the member, that is 300. And at what distance it is acting? It is acting at a distance of 6 meters. So 300 into 6. So this parameter also you know. Now you also have the other parameter, which is the reaction force. So what is the reaction force at each end? It is 996 kilonewtons. It is acting at what distance? It is acting at a distance of half of the total span. That is 24 by 2. That's how this parameter has also come from. So that is how you can find out the maximum bending moment value. Okay, so you can also find out the bending moment at A with the, if you go to the strength of materials concept, you can find out the bending moment at each and every point. That is bending moment at A, bending moment at C, E, D, and B. And then from these 5 values, you can get the maximum bending moment. So in this process takes some time. So since it is a time consuming process, you can use this method in order to find out directly the maximum bending moment. Okay, so this process can be adopted to find out the maximum bending moment as well as the maximum shear forces. I hope it is clear for all of you. Now, in the next step, what we are going to find out is we are going to design the web. So web design. So how will you design the web? You are going to design the web based on the economical depth concept, right? So economical depth, D equals to, you have the formula, which is M into K divided by Fy whole power 1/3, right? So now here the K value has to be slightly changed. Okay, in the first two models of problem, if you check down, the value of K is taken as 180 in both the first model problem and also in the second model problem. You can see here. Okay, now in this kind of problem, that is when you have the combination of loads, you can use the value of K as 150. Okay, so remember, in the first two models of problems, the value of K is 180 and here it is 150. Why it is 150? If you refer clause 8.4.2 of IS 800/2007, when you are avoiding the transverse stiffness, okay, when you are avoiding the transverse stiffness, you can use the value of K as 150. I have said already. So this, in this problem, we are going to design the end bearing stiffness, not the intermediate transverse stiffness. So when you are not using intermediate transverse stiffness, okay, the value of K is taken as 150. Since transverse stiffness are avoided, you can write this statement also. So remember, this is applicable only when you have the combination of loads. Okay, since transverse stiffness are not being used. Okay, so that's how you're going to take the value of K as 150. So therefore, economical depth D equals to the value of M, which is the maximum bending moment, that is 5976. 5976 into 10 power 6 into the value of K, which I am taking it as 150 divided by 250, that is Fy value, whole power 1/3, which will be 1422.34 mm. So the total economical depth is obtained as 1422.34 mm. So here I am rounding off this value to 1400 mm. Okay, so I'm rounding off this value to 1400 mm. Now you need to find out the value of thickness of the web as well. You have got the depth of the web as 1400 mm. Now you need to find out the thickness of the web. Now how to find out this thickness of the web? So you know the value of K equals to D by TW. You know this formula, K equals to D by TW. Here you have the value of K. Okay, here you have the value of K, which is 150. And the value of D also you have, which is the depth of the web, that is 1400. And the thickness of the web, you don't know. So from this, if you do cross multiplication, you're going to get the thickness of the web, that is TW value. So TW value is obtained as 9.4 mm. So you can round off this value to 10 mm, or you can also round off this value to 12 mm. Okay, if you use 10 mm, it will become a thin web. Okay, I told you in the second model of problem. So when you are using the thickness of the web in between 8 to 10 mm, it will be a thin web. So greater than 10 mm will be the thick web. So in this problem, they have said use thick web. So since they have said use thick web, and since we are also not providing the intermediate transverse stiffness, you can increase the thickness of the web. So I hope I don't repeat the same concept which we have done in the second model problem. Anyways, this is the thickness of the web. Okay, so therefore the dimensions of web. Okay, so therefore the dimensions of web are, so let's write these values. the dimensions of web equals to 1400 is the depth and 12 is the thickness of the web. Okay. Now, the next case which you are going to solve is the design of flange. This is the next step. So you can keep the heading as flange design. Flange design. Now, how will you design the flange? You have to design the flange based on the moment value. So here it goes in a little different way than the first two models of problems. So it can be found out in this way. Area of flange, AF. A represents area and F represents flange. Area of flange equals to M, that is moment, into gamma m naught divided by Fi into D. So from this formula, you can find out the area of the flange value. You know the moment value, which is the 5976 into 10 power 6, and gamma m naught value is taken as 1.1, and Fi value is 250, and D, which is the economical depth, is 1400 mm, which we have got in the previous step. So this gets equals to 18781.7 mm square. So this is the total area of the flange. Now, by using the area of flange, you have to find out the width of the flange and the thickness of the flange. Okay. So before finding out the width and the thickness of the flange, you have to identify one thing. So what is this? So for compression flange, remember this point. For compression flange with welded section. So since we are designing the welded plate girder, so I'm taking it as welded section. So for compression flange with welded section, the value of B by TF, that is the ratio of B by TF, should be 8.4 epsilon. Okay. So how did you get this value? So this is from table 2 of IS 800-2007. You can refer table 2 of IS 800-2007. There you have different sections: plastic, compact, semi-compact sections. Okay. So by using that, you are going to check this condition. Now, so therefore, okay, therefore B equals to 8.4 into TF. Okay, I'm just cross multiplying this term. B equals to 8.4 into TF. Therefore, area of one flange, that is AF. Sorry. Yeah, area of one flange, that is AF, equals to, you know the formula of rectangle to find out area, that is width into thickness. So area of flange equals to width of the flange into thickness of the flange. So here, the width of flange, okay, you don't know the width of the flange value. So what you know is B. Don't confuse with B and BF. They are completely different. So B is completely different from BF. So what is the value of BF? Is it is taken as 2 times of B. Okay, the value of BF, that is width of the flange, is taken as 2 times of B into TF. Okay, so that equals to 2 times of B. What is the value of B? It is 8.4 into TF. 8.4 into TF. Yeah, sorry, there is some. Yeah, 8.4 into TF into TF value. So this entire term is the BF value. Okay, so fine. Now let's find out what is this value here. So it will be, I mean, the thickness of the flange value will be, you have to calculate this one. So AF, right? You know the area of flange, which is 18781.7. Okay, this you have got it here. Okay, equals to 2 into 8.4 into TF into TF. So if you solve this equation, you are going to get the thickness of the flange as 33.43 mm. So I'm rounding it off to nearest 10-digit value, which is 40 mm. So that's how you're going to find out the thickness of the flange. So from this, you can find out the width of the flange. That's very simple. So therefore, width of a flange, that is BF, equals to area of a flange divided by thickness of the flange. So that equals to area of the flange is 18781.7 divided by thickness of the flange, which is 40. So that will be 469.54 mm. So you can round it off to 500 mm. You can take all, you can also take 470 or 480, 490 also, but let's keep the higher value for safety conditions. So now you have got the thickness of the flange, that is 40 mm, and you also have got the width of the flange, which is 500 mm. So let's write the dimensions of flange. So therefore, dimensions of flange equals to 500 mm by 40 mm. 500 mm is the width and 40 is the thickness. Okay, so that's how you're going to find out the flange dimensions. Now in the next step, you are going to find out, that is a fifth step, you're going to find out the minimum web thickness. Okay, minimum web thickness. Remember, as I said earlier, here you will get some additional steps when you have the combination of loads. So please be very careful of what are these additional steps and how they are coming. So as I was telling earlier, in this problem, we are not going to use intermediate transfer stiffness, right? So we are not going to use intermediate transfer stiffness. We are going to use only the end bearing stiffness. Why? Because they have said in the question that use a thick web. So when you are using thick web, you don't need to go for the design of intermediate transfer stiffness. Fine. So when intermediate transfer stiffness, you can write in a full sentence, when intermediate transfer stiffness are not provided, please don't write ITS in your note. So please write it as intermediate transfer stiffness. So when intermediate transfer stiffness are not provided, okay, so based on serviceability condition, based on serviceability condition, okay, you have, I mean, it should satisfy the value of D by TW must be less than 200 epsilon. So how does it is coming from? It is coming from clause 8.6.1.1a. So if you refer this clause, when intermediate transfer stiffness are not provided, based on serviceability requirement, the ratio of D by TW should be less than 200 times of epsilon. Remember where epsilon value is 1, that is under root 250 by Fy. This is the formula of epsilon. Fy value is 1, under root 1 equals to 1. So I don't repeat the same value here. Anyways, so let's find out the D by TW ratio. The value of D is 1400, which is the depth of the web, and the thickness of the web. Okay, the thickness of the web is taken as 12 because we have already solved this one. So the thickness of the web, yeah. So here you can see the thickness of the web is 12 mm. So therefore, the ratio will be 1400 upon 12 will give you 116.67. Okay, 116.67, which is less than 200. So therefore it is safe. So the size of the web which you have provided is sufficient. Okay, along with the serviceability condition, you also have another condition, which is flange buckling condition. Okay, we have to solve for that also. So when intermediate transverse stiffness are not provided, okay, based on flange buckling condition, flange buckling condition, you have these two conditions. Okay, remember this we have solved in the previous models also. So according to flange buckling conditions, the value of d by tw should also be not less than should be less than 345 into epsilon square, where epsilon is 1, however. So we have calculated the d by tw value, which is 116.67. So that implies 116.67 is less than 345, which is again the safe. That means whatever the thickness of the web which you have selected is sufficient enough to take care of the loads. Okay. Now, say for example, when you are not getting these two conditions as safe conditions, at that time you have to modify the thickness of the web. That means you have to either increase the thickness of the web or decrease the thickness of the web based on the value which you are getting. Okay, so therefore minimum thickness of web, just a minute, yeah, therefore minimum thickness of web which is provided, minimum thickness of the web provided or which is provided is sufficient. Remember, when both the conditions are not getting satisfied, you have to change the thickness of the web, okay, based on the value which you are obtaining. So this is the minimum web thickness requirement. So the next step is check for moment capacity of flange. So the sixth step, check for moment capacity of flange. Remember, I was telling you in the beginning also, flange will take care of the moments and web will take care of the shear forces or shear. Okay, so that's the reason why I mentioned the check for moment capacity of the flange. So since flanges are taken care by moments, I am doing this thing. So before solving this one, you have to do the section classification. Okay, so the section classification for flange. Section classification for flange. Okay, so how do you do this? So it is B by TF should be less than 8.4 epsilon. How does this is coming from? This is coming from table 2 of IS 800-2007. Okay, table 2 of IS 800-2007. Again, you have to find out whether it is a plastic section or compact section or semi-compact section. Okay, so most of the times it will be a plastic section only. So when it is a plastic section, the ratio of B by TF should be less than 8.4 into epsilon. And here, what is the value of B? Here, B is the value of half of width of flange, that is BF divided by 2, where BF value is 500 upon 2, which will be 250 mm. So now let's find out the ratio of B by TF. Therefore, B by TF equals to, the value of B is 250 and the thickness of the flange is 40 mm. So which is 6.25 and which is less than 8.4 into epsilon. Epsilon value is 1. So therefore, flanges or flange belong to flanges, actually flanges. You have two flanges. So flanges belong to plastic category, that is class 1. Plastic category. So when the section belongs to plastic category, the ratio of beta B, the value of beta B is taken as 1. Remember, when the flanges belongs to plastic category, or when the section belongs to plastic category, the ratio of the value of beta B is taken as 1. So therefore, what you have to find out is moment capacity, right? So when you're finding out moment capacity, design moment MD equals to, you know the formula, which is beta B into ZP into Fy divided by gamma M naught. This is the formula. So this formula is available in clause 8.2.1.2. Okay, so I said beta B equals to 1.1 for plastic section. So most of the times you will get the plastic section only. So now the thing is to find out the value of ZP, that is plastic section modulus. Now how do you find out this ZP is? You can find out in this way, that is, since you are having 2 flanges, I am writing it 2 into area of the flange, okay, into the distance of y. Now how to get this? So let us draw the diagram and then let's look at the value of y. Okay, this is the I section and the depth of the web is 1400. Okay, and the thickness of the flanges are 40 mm and thickness of the web is 12 mm and the width of the flange, that is both top and bottom flange, is 500 mm. Now you need to find out the value of y here. Okay, so the distance y is measured from the center of the flange to the center of the I section. So this distance is called as y. Now how to get this y? Y equals to 1400 divided by 2. Okay, 1400 divided by 2 plus from center of the flange, that is thickness of the flange is 40 and from there it is center, that is 40 by 2, which will be 720 mm. So that's how you can calculate the value of y. Okay, so anyways, so ZP equals to, since you are having 2 flanges, I'm multiplying with 2 into area of the flange, that is 500, that is width of the flange, into the thickness of the flange, that is 40, into y value, which is 720. Okay, so from this you can get the value of ZP. So therefore ZP equals to 28.8 into 10 power 6 mm cube. Okay, so ultimately you have to find out the design moment, which is MD. MD equals to beta B value is 1 into ZP is 28.8 into 10 power 6 into Fy is 250, okay, upon gamma M naught, which is 1.1. So if you solve for this one, it will be 6545.45 into 10 power 6 Newton mm. Now, how do you find out whether it is safe or not? So remember, this value must be greater than the maximum bending moment. So what is the maximum bending moment we have obtained? It is 5976 kilonewtons meter. Okay, 6545 is greater than 5976, which is the maximum bending moment. So therefore, it is considered as safe. Okay, therefore it is considered as safe. Now let's solve for the next step, which is check for shear capacity of web. Now we have found out the moment capacity of flange. Let's find out the shear capacity of web. Check for shear capacity of web. Why only shear capacity? Because webs will be taken care by the shear forces and flanges will be taken care by the moment forces or moments. So how do you find this value? So it can be found out as VD, that is design shear force, equals to AW, that is area of web, into Fy divided by √3 into gamma m naught. So this is available in clause 8.4 of IS 800/2007. So in this code book, they have mentioned instead of AW, they have mentioned it as AV. They both are same, which is area of web. So here for your convenience, I am writing it as AW, which is area of the web. So therefore, VD equals to area of the web is depth of the web into the thickness of the web, which is 12, into Fy value is 250 upon √3 into gamma m naught, which is 1.1. So I'll write it here. AW equals to area of web. Okay, you can check this. AW equals to area of web. So that equals to 2204 kilonewtons. 2204 kilonewtons. And you also have to find out 0.6 VD. If you remember the first model problem, we have also solved for this one, which is 0.6 VD. So that equals to 0.6 into VD is 2204 kilonewtons, which will be 1322 kilonewtons. And remember, this value must be greater than the maximum shear force which is obtained. So the maximum shear force was 996 kilonewtons, which is again safe. Okay, which is safe. So this problem is more or less related to the model 1 problem, that is without using intermediate stiffness. I'll show you that if you want. See, just a minute. So the next step will be to find out the, which is 8th step, that is check for shear buckling of web. Check for shear buckling of web. Right? In order to find out the shear buckling of web, you have two methods. The first method is simple post critical method, right? And the second method is tension field coefficient method or tension field method, right? These are the two methods which you have. But in the problem or in the question, they haven't said which method you have to use, right? They did not said how to find out whether by using simple post method or the tension field method. They did not mention that one. When nothing is mentioned regarding this aspect, that is shear buckling of web, you can directly use simple post critical method. Remember, when nothing is mentioned in the question regarding the shear buckling of web, you can directly use the simple post critical method. Don't go for tension field coefficient. It's a little complex, but however, still you can solve. But to make sure the problem is in the simplest possible way, you can directly go for simple post critical method. So this is available in clause 8.4.4.4 that I'll let you know in the next class. Okay, so this the continuation of this step will be solved in the next class.